like how the mics get hot. We just shut up completely.
I don't want to say anything incriminating.
This is good for business. Smart for everybody involved. What is up, guys? You are on the NBA Late Slate Sweat and Swap, where we talk about the main slate, talk about the swaptimizing, and of course, talk about the late slates and the showdowns that we'll have going on across the industry. We'll walk you through it all. I'm Chris Spags today, joined once again by a man who you haven't seen in so long on the YouTube channel, so get used to this unfamiliar face, Nerd-ass Greg Ehrenberg. How are you doing, Greg?
Yeah, so I've basically not gotten off the seat for the last 2.5 hours now. I've been parked in this very spot because I did the show with Josh. We also have to do a little bit of pre-show stuff where we sit here on Zoom. It's not really that important, but whatever. We make sure that everybody is attending the show and everything, so we come in a little early. So I was in 15 minutes before for the live before lock all the way through. Then I had to meet with Josh afterwards about something, and then I just had to go right into Tyler's Zoom for this show. So I've just been in this seat the entire night, and I'm very hungry.
That's good. I mean, your butt getting that groove where it needs to be, and you're not pink chair. That's what the people want. And one thing that we want from you guys to hit the like button right now as you're streaming into the show. We got 1 hour here that we're going to yield to the MMA show, previewing the UFC card coming up. It's going to be a lot of fun there. Of course, Pete and Jason Floyd do a fantastic job breaking down the sport for you. And Pete's a fighter himself, so don't get out of line in YouTube chatter. You might find yourself in a Kimura. I feel like that's something I wish, if we had a chance, Greg, to just, occasionally apply a triangle choke to somebody in the chat. I feel like it wouldn't be the worst thing for anybody.
No, I think that would be a slam dunk. I think we should go right at. I think we should go.
It would be a slam dunk, you son of a bitch. We are here on the L3S to talk about the slate. And I guess the one thing we have to talk about, which, Greg, you already talked enough about, some of the late breaking news here with Boban Marjanovic starting. And as we came on the show, he was getting his second court stint. So it seems like now Boban, assuming that this keeps on the same pace, assuming that he does Boban things, it's basically just existing on a court, hoovering up rebounds. And I think, too, the other centers, I was watching the game here on the TV and actually have to mute it because I don't think the audio is coming through, but it's annoying enough that I'm seeing this Coming to America commercial that probably doesn't need to be on the air. But Boban having a day for himself. And where did you land on your final Boban exposures?
Yeah, so Boban's he's more than half of my DraftKings lineups. He's in a very significant portion, which when I told that to Josh, he was beside himself on Live Before Lock when we were doing the post-lock show. And then he immediately started rooting against Boban after I told him my Boban exposure. And then FanDuel, where he was 3,500, I had him a little over 10%. So slightly over the field, but about even with it. Josh himself was over the field on Boban, was still rooting against him just because of my Boban exposure.
That's classic Josh. Error the never do well, that Josh is. But Boban's me. When that news broke, I was watching your guys' show, and I immediately, because of my issues with sorting recently, I've now gone the other way where there are some times where I'm missing winning lineups. There are some times where I'm just ending up with too much of some guys. Today, Buddy Hield ended up in over 50% of my lineups, and that's not a desired effect when I'm crunching things. But I just locked in Boban and locked in Derrick Rose, and we found out that he was starting. And it looks like both decisions are, these things can change. Derrick Rose can easily injure himself a million different ways. Boban can lose minutes, even though Dwight Powell and Willie Cauley-Stein, I think, definitely looked much worse on the court against Philly. But to me, I feel like the Derrick Rose and Boban takes, they were ones that I think people, if we had a full day of this news, would have talked themselves into being like, yeah, you have to play Boban, you have to play Derrick Rose. And Greg, I think people maybe got too cute not playing those guys today, but I know this is something that you were digging your heels in on early, that Derrick Rose is your guy. And how are you feeling now? Like, are you like a proud papa, I would assume?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's also like 70% owned, so it's not like the field really.
It's all you. You got all the exposure. Nobody else did.
yeah, it's all me. I have 6,000 of the 15,000 entries today. But yeah, I mean, the field's in on him also. But I mean, right now, I feel like the way lineups are setting up, because I'm really heavy on Derrick Rose, I'm heavy on Boban. The field is too, but I'm still overweight on those guys. I feel like now I kind of just need the studs to all go off, and then I have a decent chance of getting a high finish on a lineup, because at this point, Boban, like, who's outscoring Boban at bin price? Unless he just doesn't play the rest of the game. He seems pretty likely to end up in the optimal lineup, and same goes for Derrick Rose after a big first quarter. So, yeah, I mean, Boban's already at 17.25 DraftKings points, and still a half, 2.5 quarters left to play.
Yeah, I'm sure he's not going to all of a sudden play 35 minutes or anything like that, but it does seem like him getting that second stint, not even getting the first half start and second half start situation, to me, I think makes Boban look like he should be able to get where he needs to. But of course, we're talking about it live on a show, so that means it's going to go sideways the second that we've said it out loud. Just the nature of the beast on here. We're checking the premium Slack too. And of course, make sure you're getting in there. We have data for the entire slates, of course, as always. We also have the boom bust tool and night slate ownership, as well as single game ownership too for FanDuel and DraftKings. We have the Milwaukee Pelicans game that is going to be going off on FanDuel and DraftKings with some pretty big tournaments. There's ownership for that one, player projections for that one. If you just want to look at that game, this is all available to you at awesemo.com/join. And Boban getting an and one. It's so nice having games on while doing a show because, like, I guess it's good and bad that I'm distracted immediately like a goldfish, but I just like seeing guys do well. And I guess it would be bad if Boban were just there, Jason Tatuming it up.
Yeah, I mean, Boban's he has about as many fantasy points as Jason Tatum had all of yesterday. So, I mean, he almost matched Jason Tatum in the first quarter. Not that it was that hard to do because Jason Tatum absolutely crapped the bed yesterday. But this slate's certainly looking a lot better for me than yesterday's did.
So let's talk a little bit. We've discussed some of the key plays so far, and obviously some of the guys, these things are going to move around here. We're barely into the second quarter. I mean, I guess with the Dallas game, we're mostly through the second quarter, but a lot of time left to go. But is there anything, Greg, that you would do right now? I guess let's talk kind of about the overall builds and how things are looking, because Derrick Rose and Boban, two guys that we liked a lot. As Greg mentioned, Derrick Rose, very highly owned. Boban, to me, not as highly owned as he should have been, but around the neighborhood of 40% on DraftKings in the bigger tournaments that I saw. In this spot, Greg, is there anything you would do if you had Boban and Derrick Rose and nobody else is killing your lineup at this time? Is there anything swaptomizer wise you would do? Because I think there's a decent chance these people may have Giannis in their lineup. There's a decent chance that they may have Jokic in their lineup, who's one of the chalkier plays. What do you think their lineups are looking like right now? And how would you get different if you do have some of the plays that are going off?
So let's address this a couple ways. First, if you have Boban and Derrick Rose in your lineup, then I assume you have one of, or if not both of Giannis and Jokic, because you have so much salary opened up because Boban was the flat min, and then Derrick Rose was 4,600 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, we had Boban was 3,500. So there's no way you were able to roster Boban and Jokic together anyway, because they play the same position. But it's hard to find other guys to swap to just because those two guys were so cheap on DraftKings that I don't even know where else you would go to get away from some of the other players if you wanted to differentiate with a live lineup. Like, I think ideally you want to have Jokic and Giannis jammed into lineups that have Derrick Rose and Boban.
Yeah, I think that. See, I think because of Jokic being on the lineups, and you're right, it's going to be different with FanDuel, where if you played Boban on FanDuel, you're going to be out of the running for Jokic. On DraftKings, I think it's possible that people weren't going to be playing Murray a lot. So I guess that is something that I think is one pivot you could make if you wanted to swaptomize off, and you could then have Murray eating up some salary. Like, let's say you had, if you had Zion. So here's one guy that I'm honestly, and we could talk about this a little bit in some length. Zion's a guy that for me, I'm always under projecting. And I think for the most part, it doesn't kill me most slates. And granted, he's on a pretty good run, which is resulting in this price coming up. But where are you landing with Zion tonight? Because I think people, if you had Zion in a lineup, I feel like he's one guy I'd be willing to move away from and trying to get to Jamal Murray, who I think has a bit more upside. But is there any thoughts you really have on Zion and the run he's on, the price he's at? Because I just don't see him being a must-have, but I could see him being highly owned because people just buy into Zion and his good games more than his bad.
Because of positional scarcity, I have him around 20% on FanDuel. I didn't get to him on DraftKings. He is price tag. It was around the same. Just trying to bring it up. So I have the 8,600 on DraftKings. Just because of the way that DraftKings is a little bit more price sensitive, just because there's so much more positional flexibility. I didn't find Zion to be somebody that I wanted to get to on DK, but FanDuel, we needed to roster two power forwards, and there was so much value at other positions on FanDuel. There was value at point guard. There was value at shooting guard. There was value at small forward. Power forward made a lot of sense to spend up for. So that was where I got to more guys like Zion, Giannis, who I got to on both sides. So like Julius Randle, somebody I got to on FanDuel I didn't get to on DraftKings. So those guys I thought were really important pieces on FanDuel, but not so much on DraftKings where we could just kind of more play where we wanted to.
Yeah, so Zion, I guess from just looking at the main slate ownership for him where he was going to be 7%, like I personally just wouldn't want to be there too much. And I do think Murray, who's also single digit ownership on the main slate, would appeal to me more. But yeah, I think Zion is maybe one guy, like I'm trying to think what the configuration would be, but if you had Giannis and let's say Dante DiVincenzo, so you have Giannis and DiVincenzo or somebody who gets closer there, like pivoting off of Giannis and I think trying to go to the 8K range and getting one of Murray, one of Zion would be one move to make. I guess Ingram too, you could put in the mix too. He's fairly cheap on DraftKings. I didn't get a ton of them tonight, but I feel like for the late slate, he's a better play than he was on the main slate.
Yeah, you know what's funny is I'm just looking at I didn't even realize what my DraftKings ownership was for tonight's slate, just because there were so many swaps that had to be made last second, where it was all of a sudden like Boban, and then right after Josh and I finished the Jock Market show, all of a sudden Davis Bertans was scratched, and then it was like, all right, now I want to get Denny into my lineup. So my lineup ended up being so heavy stars and scrubs for this slate that I wasn't even totally aware what my final ownership was until I'm looking it over right now.
We also just got a question in the YouTube chat, and we are, as we always do on the Late Slate Sweat and Swap show, we're kind of talking about the overall slate and the overall moves you can make before digging too deeply into the late slate itself and the showdown slate. So hit that like button if you're in here right now. We appreciate pretty much everybody in here hitting the like button because this is a show we're still getting off the ground, and we appreciate all the engagement we can get. But Jacob Kimball saying Augustine is playing, isn't he? UVNC, I see you're answering this in the chat right now, Greg, but who do you think takes Augustine minutes for the showdown? So let's talk about DJ Augustine a little bit, because I guess this is one spot where in the past, before Augustine took over the starting job, we had seen Bryn Forbes picking up some starts. Trying to see, I'm going to pull up Popcorn Machine and see if there's anybody else who jumps out minutes wise. But Greg, without Augustine, is there anybody you'd give a boost to? And you just talk about it agnostically, not specific to either swap-domizing or the late slate itself. Yeah.
So Bryn Forbes was starting right before Augustine took over the starting job. I didn't end up getting to Forbes just to address the swap-domized part, because there's so many other values at that point that I had rated higher than Bryn Forbes that I wasn't able to get to him in lineups. But still, I mean, Bryn Forbes is somebody, if this wasn't a slate with so many cheap plays, I have him projected for a little over 20 fantasy points. As a starter this year, he's playing 27 minutes per game, averaging 17.3 fantasy points. But I think it's reasonable to expect those minutes are going to be a little bit higher just because DJ Augustine is now no longer going to be active. So Bryn Forbes, I think, is a viable cheap option for the late slate. But for the main slate, just not a swap option, because there's so many other plays that I preferred to him on the cheap end.
It's kind of weird. Like I'm looking at the Popcorn Machine minutes from last game to see if there's anybody who I guess got more of a minute swap, because Bryn Forbes is not the direct backup for Augustine, even though they did do the swap with the starting positions, as Greg just mentioned. But the last game that they played against Minnesota, you know who came in for DJ Augustine for his stint, which I think you probably wouldn't expect?
How off the board is it?
I mean, it's not totally off the board. It's somebody I think you would identify as being part of Milwaukee, but it's not what I would expect when you're taking out Augustine, that this person would come in.
Was it Torrey Craig?
Thanasis Antetokounmpo came in for both stints where Augustine left the game in the first half and the second half of last game.
Was it confusion by Bud? Was he like, "Hey, Giannis, get in"? He's just pointing at the wrong guy.
Hey, Greek guy, get in there. Yeah. And he forgot.
Yeah, he just saw the long name on the back of the jersey. He's like, "You go," and he jumped in the game. Yeah, that is surprising to me. I mean, I have him playing 15 minutes tonight. That makes him, at least for Showdown, a viable play. But yeah, somebody not viable for the main slate, but for Showdown where the pricing is different and less options to choose from, I think he's definitely a viable cheap play.
The game before too against Sacramento, he came in for DJ Augustine. It's weird because like normally that does mean this person's a direct backup, and it's not like in the second quarter of the game against Sacramento, it looks like Antetokounmpo then came out and then Giannis came back in. So like it was something where they were direct backups, but then Thanasis, they just didn't need to keep him on the floor. But he is a guy playing 13 minutes 2 games ago, playing over 15 minutes in this game, the last game. Like I agree, for Showdown, it's definitely more of a play, but it's just interesting to me that this somehow is a pathway for him to get more minutes, because that's not a dude I would have been like, oh yeah, that Augustine out, like yeah, just bump up Thanasis and you're good to go.
Yeah, I mean Showdown, like I said, in play, I gave him 15 minutes. What did Alex give him? Let me check that. I haven't looked at Alex's numbers since the. I
think we're still waiting on an update for the Augustine news. I might be. Actually, let me double check to make sure, because he got it in earlier than I would have expected. So he gave Thanasis 15.2 minutes.
All right, so same as me. So I agree with him. I mean, I didn't go as specific as the 15.
I agree with him. He said the same as you,
Yeah.
so he's
Yeah.
he's got to be right then.
Yeah. Well, he was just listening and goes, all right, 15. But yeah, I think that's reasonable based on what we've seen from the last few games. The other thing I'd add in there is that Thanasis, the reason I wouldn't expect him to go over that number, even though it is what he played in the last few games, they were also blowouts where the Bucks starters didn't close those games because the Bucks were just smashing people. Although one of the games the Bucks lost by a lot also. So like last game where we saw Thanasis play over 15 minutes, that was partially because of the blowout, but 15 minutes, fair number for Thanasis in my humble opinion.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to maybe consider him one of the dart throw plays. I know in the showdown, the guy that I was really looking at was Kira Lewis, just because I think he's going to be a little bit less owned amongst the value plays. I guess, do we want to talk the showdown quickly since we're talking about this game? I don't know. We could talk about the late slate, and I think if we talk the showdown first, maybe we'll sort of two birds, one stone this one. But I feel like everybody for Milwaukee looks a little bit better with Augustine out now. Like DiVincenzo to me takes a bit of a jump. Giannis obviously looked great anyway. Middleton looked great anyway. Brook Lopez, I don't hate. Like, I think the Milwaukee side to me looks a lot more appealing than the New Orleans side for a showdown. But do you have any feel on this one, Greg? Do you think maybe a little more differently about New Orleans?
Not for value, especially because so when you're looking at a main slate, DJ Augustine being out, that wouldn't really be something to be like, oh my God, all these crazy, like, oh my God, Thanasis Antetokounmpo, I have to get him as a value play. But it matters a lot for a showdown slate where the min price is low as $1,000, and Thanasis is priced at $2,400 in the utility spot for showdown. So the reason that I think it makes a whole lot more sense to get value from the Milwaukee side at least is because Augustine being out matters a whole lot for that. And then in terms of pay up options, like I think Ingram's a good one. I think Zion's viable. I like Lonzo Ball in the mid range, but other than that, I think it makes a lot more sense to be heavy on Milwaukee.
Yeah, I think Milwaukee definitely looks a lot more appealing to me, and a very high total in this game, and one that, you know, there are going to have to be some things that occur on New Orleans side. I guess to me, I'll put it out there now, and it's something that I think our boy Brad asked during the earlier show during the tip-off, and I gave him as we were getting off the air there, who my captain I thought would be, and it did end up being Lonzo Ball is going to be my captain choice for the lineup I'm putting in the showdown. I just think the opportunity here is pretty big. He shoots 8 3-pointers a game. That probably feels ill-advised, but also, you know, a 39% shooter on the year for Lonzo. And I feel like, too, it's something where, you know, I think teams might be letting him shoot more threes because they think he still sucks as a 3-point shooter, maybe expecting that regression to come back. But I feel like in this spot, I think Milwaukee's going to give him some looks. He's also going to be distributing the ball. He's going to have to set up some guys. I feel like for Lonzo, this is a sneakily pretty good spot. And Ben Rosso has put me on that earlier, and I'm now fully taking credit for it. But how do you feel about Lonzo in this spot? And do you feel like he's viable as a captain?
As a captain, no, but I do like him as a utility spot, and I like him for the full slate. In terms of the main slate, I got some exposure to him also because the price was down a little bit. He wasn't a core play for me or anything, but he was somebody who wound up in my player pool. Especially he ended up in a little bit, I think, because I had some exposure to DJ Augustine, and then when I just took him out and reshuffled my lineups, I ended up with some of that going to Lonzo Ball because there's only 2 games left on the slate. Because today, unlike yesterday, 2 games on the nightcap, which, you know, that was very controversial. That took up a whole quarter of our show yesterday, trying to figure out how many games are on the slate. So Lonzo Ball, anyway, yeah, I think that with the price drop he's had recently, I do think he's in play. Also, quietly, I think this is partially because of how well LaMelo is playing. Lonzo's gone overlooked this year. He's a much better shooter than he's been in the past. He's cleaned up the mechanics on his 3-point shot. And I just think that LaMelo is all the range now that just nobody gives a care about Lonzo Ball, but he's playing better than people think.
Also, Quickly going off right now, by the way. Quickly is almost up to 20 fantasy points.
Yeah, I mean, I think like all the Knicks guys are.
That's what happens when you play the Kings, especially when you play as slow as the Knicks do. Like, I had no issue. I know this is something that you guys took some questions on, but playing Quickly and Rose together, you know, maybe it's somehow Rose's minutes get cut by Quickly going off right now, but that seems like that was actually going to be an optimal move, even though I think a lot of people would have thought that. I'm sure some people make groups out there to get away from playing Quickly and Rose together.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely something that I thought was ill-advised, not playing them together, just because it was something else. Just to rehash what Josh and I were talking about on the show, is when 2 guys are so cheap picking up extra minutes, it's not hard for a scenario to happen where 2 guys who are sub 5K to go off in a big games at the same time. Derrick Rose a little more expensive on FanDuel, 5,700, but even so, I mean, then you look at the DraftKings price, 46 and 41 off the top of my head. it's not crazy for those two guys to both have big games. It's not the same as saying like, oh, what about Luka and Porzingis playing them together? Like, it's less likely for both of those guys to score, like over like 50 and 60 fantasy points a piece to have big games. But if you get 30 and 25 fantasy points out of Rose and quickly, you're in a great spot, and that's pretty easily attainable.
Yeah, it's one of those situations that, Quickly's minutes were down because of Rose being in the mix. And then when Peyton comes out, I agree. Like, I think that was one that to me jumped out right away. I did think Quickly was going to start, so I would have been on the wrong side of history with that one. But I did feel like both these guys had room to get there just because the roles were getting better. And really the minutes for Quickly got more secure either way. Also, Buddy Hield fucking sucks. And I just hate that. Like, I don't get why my projections do it, because I very much think Buddy Hield sucks. Like, there's no reason why going against the Knicks that he would bubble up. And I guess just didn't have a lot of confidence in the Josh Richardsoners of the world who were going to be chalkier. But that's one thing I really hate about my personal sorting process, is that my lineups are like, yeah, Buddy Hield, this is going to really be a game changer for you. Low owned and well projected. And now I'm just trapped in Buddy Hield world.
By the way, because I've been looking for something that somebody had said in the chat before. There's nothing I've seen that Will Barton is out tonight. Somebody brought that up before. I have not seen that anywhere.
No, that has not been any news. And of course, our news god's in chat too. So if there is anything important out there, we will give you guys that news in the chat. News gods gets that name for a reason. They don't just call you news god because you occasionally talk about news. They call you news god when that's all you're doing. You have to earn deity status by putting in more than those 10,000 hours that Malcolm Gladwell talks about.
And by the way, on cue, he posts the starting lineup for the Nuggets, which does include Will Barton, Murray, Morris, Barton, Porter, Jokic. No surprises there. Whoever thought Will Barton was suspended, you were incorrect, sir.
And we will not stand for Will Barton rumors and innuendo on this show. You could save that for a Josh show where I'm sure he'll be like, Will Barton better than Jimmy Butler. And then we'll be like, what? And then Josh will have a logic for it. That's sometimes questionable, but damn it, he believes it in his heart, and that's what matters. Hit the like button now, guys, by the way, because we just need some more likes here. We got 250 people in here. We got 50 likes. Get us over 100, and I'll give you guys I'll give you the top 5 owned plays for the night slate and for the showdown with the Pelicans and Milwaukee. So that's a double bonus for you guys by just hitting one button. Could you imagine if things in life were this easy, where you get something for free just for hitting a button? Besides, I guess, Top Shot, that doesn't seem, or being an NBA player and getting top shots, that's the only other place that works out.
Yeah, which I could riff on that for a second too. But also, don't forget, guys, subscribe to the YouTube channel too. We've been a little lax on this ever since we hit 50,000, and got a little talking to in the Slack chat about it. So please do us a favor, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Likes are nice, but subscriptions are even better, because you subscribe to the channel. It costs nothing to you. It's free. And then you find out when all of our other shows go live, like the MMA strategy show, which is coming up right after Spags and I are off, because eventually we want to get somebody other than me on the YouTube channel to talk about fantasy sports. Sometimes, yeah. But I think for MMA, having Pete and Jason Floyd there is going to be the best approach there, even if Greg would be a comfortable second place to both of them, I'm sure. Over under in the YouTube chat saying, imagine being the Kings who are paying Buddy Hield $25 million a season. That really might be one of the worst contracts in the league, given, I know, Greg, you've previously shamed Buddy Hield for being an old man, but also an old man who doesn't shoot too well and doesn't do anything besides shooting. Really not a great guy you want to spend that much money on. No, the 3 oldest players in the NBA are Al Horford, Buddy Hield, and Obi Toppin. So, I mean, Buddy Hield right up there.
All right. Let's see. Yeah, people, no fake news. Definitely no fake news in the chat. And if we do see it, we do usually at least give the person a temporary ban in the hopes that they learn their lesson, and sometimes more, because you got to take control of the situation sometimes. Showdown captains here. Let's talk about them real fast. Again, hit that like button, guys. We'll give you guys some of the actual Showdown ownership numbers for free. Or if you don't want to wait, you can get them yourself at awesemo.com/join. Express packages on there. And of course, the main packages where you get all the data available. Boom, bust tool, player projections right from Awesemo, and the ownership projections. But the rankings packages are cheap. The express packages on there, you get rankings form, grade form of all those things. So check out awesemo.com/join. Who would be your preferred captain, Greg? Because the obvious play is going to be Giannis Antetokounmpo. He'll be owned as such. I think Chris Middleton too. Seems like he'll be fairly owned. But for this showdown game with the Pelicans and Milwaukee, who would be your captain du jour?
All right. So the one in the build that I made, Giannis is coming up as captain most frequently. If I'm going off the board with a contrarian captain, Bryn Forbes, and then that would allow you to pay up for a bunch of other options. I do think there's some value on Bryn Forbes now that we don't have DJ Augustin in. I'm assuming that Bryn Forbes starts and plays in the neighborhood of 30 minutes. As long as that is the case, I think that it is at least sensible to put him in at the captain spot, and then you just pay up for whoever you want. So you could pay up for Giannis, you could throw Chris Middleton in there, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson. So if I'm going contrarian, Bryn Forbes, but if you're just trying to make an optimal lineup where you're trying to score the most points possible, then it would be Giannis at captain.
I get wanting Giannis a captain. I just think right away for me, I'm always going to try to get away from the guy who does seem like he's going to be the chalk captain. And I'm just going to give a quick little look here at the ownership and make sure that it's up to date. But we have, so Giannis is going to be very chalky, obviously, but it does feel low, honestly, that Giannis is not going to have even half the field on it at captain. But that said, you're getting different from 40% of the field on DraftKings right away. And we've talked about the differences in some of these shows recently, Greg, where FanDuel, obviously, it's not the same case because you're not paying a premium for the MVP spot. But on DraftKings, I feel like getting away from Giannis at captain is just one move you can make right away to get away from 2/5 of the field. And you're saying that's not something you would do. You'd be willing to take the Giannis captain chalk.
Yeah, I think that the Giannis captain chalk, I don't mind it, especially considering that I have him projected for just so many more fantasy points than everybody else in this game. The other thing also is we have a lot of value now. We've talked about a Thanasis. He's a viable value play. You get the double Antetokounmpo narrative in there. You get both of them in the same lineup. Bryn Forbes, he's a good value play now. So there's enough cheap options where I don't think there's very much opportunity cost to throwing Giannis in the captain.
I also like that Tyler wrote Showdown Capitan plays as though we're bringing it's not Taco Tuesday, so we are not doing that. But the Capitan, honestly, keep it, Tyler. Don't change it. Just own it. We're playing some Capitans today, and I like the way that for me, Lonzo is my Capitan de choice, and I'll keep it because that's my way of getting different right away. No Giannis, I'll still be playing Giannis, but that is a spot. News God also saying Forbes is not expected to start, so keep that in mind here.
So
and
who'd be starting then?
I don't know. If I had to guess, if it's not him, it's got to be somebody who can shoot. So I think we're probably not going to see Torrey Craig. Of course, now that I've said that, it'll be Torrey Craig. Connaughton, maybe.
Let's see. I can't reason it being anybody other than Bryn Forbes.
Maybe you start Portis just to get another body out there who can, defend the Zion and Ingram duo.
I don't know. Wait, you get Portis out there like punching Zion Williamson and kicking him in the nuts. Like is that even gonna move Zion? Zion will just run. Zion will eat his punches.
It would be an effective strategy.
Let's see. El Negro Loco here. He says DiVincenzo, Connaughton, Middleton, Giannis, and Lopez.
So Connaughton, yeah. So Rinpack saying Connaughton, a question mark though. But Connaughton. So that was my guess.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, then Connaughton, I would have him ahead of Bryn Forbes as a value play. And I'd say that if you're going for a contrarian captain option who is cheap and you want to spend up for everybody, then Bryn Forbes would be the guy that I'd go in that spot. That I'd go Pat Connaughton over Bryn Forbes in terms of that contrarian captain play I mentioned before.
Yeah, I mean, if he's starting, the minutes should be there for him. Certainly not going to be the most productive there, but Connaughton should be, in play. I think I wouldn't want to play Connaughton at captain. I think you can get flimsy. How would you want to play Connaughton at captain, but not Lonzo at captain? I feel like that's so insulting to the entire Ball family.
Well, it's because of the price difference and how that if you play Connaughton at captain, you're able to just spend up for everybody.
I guess I never liked those captain lineups where you can get everybody in because I just feel like every time, what was it the other night? It was LeBron didn't make it into the winning lineup, right? Or did he, even though he sucked? That might have been.
It was he still ended up in the optimal lineup, but I think the captain ended up being Mike Conley.
So that was our pick. Somebody gave us a shout out in the chat for that earlier. I think it was actually Salad Boy.
It was our dear friend Salad Boy,
our beloved Salad Boy, who was there. Which, if you missed that show yesterday, we thought somebody was insulting Greg by calling him Salad Boy. It's a whole thing. Anyway, there's a guy named Salad Boy in the chat, and he's our mascot, really, of the L3S. I think would be how we're feeling about it.
If we needed to have a mascot, I still feel like the money hat is the overall mascot.
That's true. And it is almost money time here. So final call, smash the like button now, and we'll give you guys some free ownership numbers. Just need 28 more likes here. That's really 10% of the people hitting the like button who haven't hit it yet. You'll get past 100 likes, and we'll give you guys the top owned plays on DraftKings and FanDuel for the late slate, as well as for the showdown slate. So you're getting a double bonus today because it's Thirsty Thursdays, and we're thirsty for your likes here on the channel. And of course, subscribe too, because that helps out a bunch with us getting seen by more people. And let's talk a little bit about this one, because Denny Avdia was a guy I was getting earlier today just because he's 3,100 on DraftKings, and that gave my optimal lineup some construction that I guess they felt like they needed. And at this point, he'll probably be a better player than Buddy Hield, even if Davis Bertans weren't in. But Davis Bertans is out for sure. So do you think that Avdia benefits from that, Greg, or is there somebody else who you think would benefit? Garrison Matthews, I think another 3-point shooter who could see a little bit of an uptick in minutes, or at least more security to his usual starting minutes. But how do you feel about the Wizards with no Bertans, a guy who I think you've said some ill things about in the past, though maybe that's just everybody else?
No, I mean, I kind of like Bertans in general, but I mean, whatever. That's irrelevant. Whatever's in the past. I don't remember what I said. There's a lot of people. I'll get comments on YouTube like, how come you said this on Twitter about things like, how come you said this on YouTube about this player 6 weeks ago? Like, I don't remember saying it. I say I've been sitting in this chair, like we said, for almost 3 hours now. I say all kinds of things. But I don't remember what I said about Bertans in the past. But in general, I think he's fun to watch. I like when he makes shots from 40 feet away from the basket, even if some of them are ill-advised at times. But without him, more importantly, Denny, I have him projected for a little over 20 fantasy points. So I think that him at his 2,100 price tag on DraftKings, 3,500 on FanDuel, I have him on the main slate on both sites now. And then I don't see any issue with him on the late slate either, because he's one of the better sources of value.
Well, you have him for over 20 fantasy points?
Yes, I think he's gonna play good minutes now.
Okay, how many minutes do you have him at? Awesemo has him at 22, so that's what I'm pulling.
I have him playing a lot more minutes than that.
Interesting. Okay. I
gave Denny 27 minutes.
Okay. I hope you're right. I think based on what I'm doing right now. Where do you have Rui at? Because I assume that's the one that maybe you don't have as high.
Well, I think Rui sucks. So I have him for a lot of minutes, but I don't ever really roster him.
Okay, so Alex has Rui at 34 minutes, and then basically, and then Beal and Westbrook at 36 minutes, and then everybody else at like 21 to 23.
And then I'm assuming that let me see, do we have all right?
Thank you, Tyler.
We'll get there. We're talking about very important players right now.
It is money time, and you guys got us to 85 likes. Get us to 15 more likes while I'm talking, so hopefully I won't feel like a total dickhead for giving you guys the ownership, even when you don't do the simple task that I basically plead for you, so we have some sort of self-worth on the show. But hit the like button, and here are the top 5 owned plays for the night slate first on DraftKings, and these are from an hour ago, so they may change a little bit with some of the news going around out there. Nikola Jokic, 58% on DraftKings. He'll be number 1. Number 2, Giannis Antetokounmpo, 48%. Number 3, Michael Porter Jr. at 40%. Number 4, Dante DiVincenzo at 34%. And number 5, Lonzo, pretty high here at 33%. Greg, out of that top 5, who is your least favorite there, and why is it Michael Porter Jr. at 40%?
I don't mind Michael Porter Jr. For the main slate. It's kind of funny because for the late slate, actually, I think that at that kind of ownership, he's a little bit less of a strong play. Just because there's still so much variance in his game, and he's been bad for a while. But it's also different DraftKings versus FanDuel. FanDuel, it's hard to get away from him where there's less positional flexibility. But DraftKings at his 6,000 is the price point, I think it was.
6,000.
Yeah, 6,000. So 6,000, I think the price is a little bit too cheap, but it's nothing like crazy wild. FanDuel is 5,700, and we have to roster 2 small forwards. So the small forward options on FanDuel, it's Ingram, Middleton. I don't really like Rui. And then there's Michael Porter Jr. and there's nobody else. And Will Barton. Other than that, there's nobody I really consider a viable play at small forward for the late slate. So that makes it harder to away from Porter Jr., but he's a little overowned on DraftKings.
Yeah, I personally would rather go to Will Barton, so that's part of my pick there. And just one thing that jumped out to me is over the last month, Michael Porter Jr. has had a 2% assist rate, which it doesn't seem great for the most part when you're a guy who also gets the hook pretty fast. But he's going to have a bounce back day one of these days. We've said it enough times, but I think he's a better play on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings. And speaking of the top 5 for the night slate on FanDuel, number 1, Dante DiVincenzo at 69%. Normally a nice number, perhaps not so much when it's Dante DiVincenzo. Number 2, Giannis Antetokounmpo at 63%. Number 3, Nikola Jokic at 61%. Number 4, Eric Bledsoe at 57%. And number 5, Michael Porter Jr. at 55%. Greg, same thing here. Top 5 on FanDuel: DiVincenzo, Giannis, Nikola Jokic, Bledsoe, and Porter. Who would you fade here? And please tell me that it's the former MVP / future MVP, Eric Bledsoe.
So here's the other issue. Here are the shooting guard options on FanDuel: Bradley Beal, Dante DiVincenzo, Eric Bledsoe, Bryn Forbes, and that's it. So I don't see how you totally get away from Eric Bledsoe considering those being the options. I do think the 2 best plays are Bradley Beal and Dante DiVincenzo, especially now that DJ Augustine's out. That shores up the minutes for DiVincenzo a little bit. But I can't say that you want to totally get away from Eric Bledsoe when there's 4 shooting guard plays on the entire slate and you have to play 2 of them.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to look at it, and that is some of the fun on FanDuel that goes on. But yeah, for me, just Eric Bledsoe, I feel like he's just a total non-factor. It's weird because he does play minutes, he is involved, like he's out there. He still sometimes I feel like projects decently well on DraftKings though. Like I really see no issue, or no reason to play him at all. On FanDuel, certainly a bit more logic. Let's do the showdown ownership too here, because I promised a double whammy, and gosh darn it, we lived up to our promises here on this channel. Number 1, Giannis, 88% overall ownership. And as I mentioned earlier on DraftKings, he'll be the captain at 41%. Number 2, Chris Middleton, 59% overall ownership. Number 3, Zion Williamson, 55% overall ownership. Number 4, Brandon Ingram at 54%. And number 5, Lonzo Ball at 47% ownership between the captain and a utility spot. And for FanDuel, the top 5, Giannis, number 1 at 86%. Number 2, Chris Middleton at 56%. Number 3, Zion Williamson at 50%. Number 4, Lonzo Ball at 42%. And number 5, Dante DiVincenzo at 42%. And the MVP, a runaway victory for Giannis on FanDuel. Real fast, Greg, because we didn't talk much of the FanDuel MVP star percentage, all those things, or star and pro spots rather. How are you feeling about Giannis on there? And would he be a slam dunk for you at MVP on FanDuel?
He's an and one for sure. I mean, you just look at the other options, and don't forget too, the way that FanDuel works, it's you have to figure out who is going to score the most fantasy points. That's who belongs in the MVP spot. There's no opportunity cost associated with a 1.5x difference in price, to where there's no thing where it's like, oh, it handicaps the rest of my lineups by playing Giannis in the MVP spot. And he is projected to me by far to be the highest scoring player in the slate. Let me bring up my FanDuel ones really quick. I'm gonna just say what exactly the gap is for him versus everybody else. So Giannis over 60 FanDuel points, and then next would be Zion. So yeah, I have him project for almost 20 more fantasy points than Zion Williamson. So the odds of Zion outscoring Giannis are not very likely.
Okay. Also, I have one lineup that's kind of live in the fadeaway right now, which actually I just sorted away from the ownership. But I have Quickly, Rose, Josh Richardson. This is thankfully one of my non-Buddy Hield lineups. Boban, De'Aaron Fox, Bagley, and Kyrie. 153.5 with 214 in PMR left. I feel good about this lineup, and I have Giannis as my guy remaining. So hard to feel bad about having Giannis as your last man in.
Yeah, I have so much exposure to Giannis and Jokic that it's hard for me to know where I stand. I think I have a couple of lineups that are Giannis, Jokic, and Harden, and then just a bunch of punt plays, which at the way that this slate's going so far, that could be what ends up being optimal.
I'm excited. This is honestly, I've talked about it here where I've been running kind of bad with I think like 5 out of the last 6 nights. And today I feel good. I really feel like I freed myself from my data mongering recently, where I just was like, screw it. I'm locking in Rose. I'm locking in Boban. And now I could finally live up to my potential, Greg, as we all hoped really for me, I think, on this channel.
Yeah, that's what everybody's here for. Everybody shows up to show like, oh my god, I hope Spags is doing well.
I hope Spags lives up to his potential finally. That's
Yeah.
really the main thing people are saying.
Yeah, before he shows up, he turns around the money hat and it's just the symbols peeling off.
It's on here. Honestly, the one thing I will say about these hats, they clearly are chintzy and they were like, I think $12 on Amazon. But this guy's on here. This guy's on here pretty tight. Like that dollar sign's not coming off unless you really yank.
And real diamonds. The people at home probably haven't even realized that, but there's the real diamonds. Spags actually spent his entire salary on just a diamond studded hat. Like that's the reason that he's doing so many late night shows now is because he needs to pay his rent because he spent it all on money hats.
That's true. It's a classic trap that guys like me and MC Hammer fall into is that we sometimes get too caught up in our image and the aesthetic. And that's what happened with my money hat. Here's Boban not starting the second half. And that got an LOL from B's YouTube, but no LOL from me, my friend, even though I don't think at this point Boban can completely kill you in a tournament.
No, I mean, he's already scored
almost 20, I think.
He scored 18 fantasy points in the first half.
Yeah. So he's not, I mean, I think his chances of not being the optimal rather could be lower if he doesn't get another stint, but still like he might not necessarily be a deal breaker. I think we had yesterday, like a 19 fantasy point and like a 20 fantasy point in the winning lineup because of Lonnie Walker.
Yeah. Especially because we already have, Harden's already having a big game. So let's say Harden continues to have a really big night. It's not crazy to think Jokic has a big game. It's not crazy to think Giannis has a big game. If all three of those guys go off, there's going to have to be punt plays that are thrown in there somewhere. And we don't know that Boban isn't coming back in the game anyway. He just scored 18 fantasy points in the first half, and people are laughing that he scored 18 in the first half at min price. Like I'm pretty happy with that result.
I'd be happy too if Boban gets a stint against Dwight Howard. I feel like that wouldn't be the worst thing either because he's probably a better version of what Dwight Howard does, at least on the rebounding and offensive side. Defensively, certainly leaves a little bit to be desired. Also, Bruce Brown. I know that was one of Josh's guys today, but having another nice day against Orlando. 18 fantasy points for him.
Yeah, that's a very solid first half. A couple of steals in there. Shot 80% from the field, so that's maybe a little unsustainable in the second half. But yeah, definitely a good start for him.
It's weird. It's like one of these things with these guys where I feel like you can't tell if he's just playing above his head or if like Steve Nash, like, you know what, Bruce, like go get your shot, man. Like you're just out here hovering up rebounds or hoovering up rebounds and not doing much else. Like do something out there. And then he's like, okay, I guess. And then finally decides to get scored.
He took 5 shots. You just have to make 4 of them. So it's not like it's Bruce Brown out there lighting it up with usage.
Well, no, the last 2 games though, he's been over 10 shots, which, for Bruce Brown is a lot, especially, compared to Kyrie and James Harden, hungry hippoing all the shots around.
By the way, the efficiency for the Nets starting lineup, Joe Harris went 4 of 4 from the field. Bruce Brown went 4 of 5. Harden and Kyrie both went 6 of 12 in the first half. So the Nets shot 51% from the field in the first half, and they were up 18 points on the match. And Nets kind of playing decent defense now too. They're good.
I mean, I would think they're my current pick for the finals, I mean, not to win it all, but to get to the finals there. I don't know. I feel like this is without Durant too. And I feel like they figured out a lot. I think actually this time without Durant might be beneficial because Durant, we know he's going to come in and do something. And I feel like Harden and Kyrie kind of needed to figure out their own pecking order there.
Yeah. And I mean, they've established it now. I can't remember if I talked about it with you. I don't know. It's another one of those things. I talk a lot on YouTube. It's hard to know who it is. But yeah, I mean, now that they have James Harden established as he is the point guard, he is the guy who brings up the ball and he initiates the offense. Kyrie plays off guard. He's the shooting guard. And then Kevin Durant, who's kind of hilariously made like the lockdown defender at this point, but whatever, that is what it is. He's better than the other options they have, but there are roles that everybody has. And that in Kevin Durant, you could plug him into any system. Kevin Durant is probably Kevin Durant and Steph Curry are the 2 easiest players to plug into any offense, and they can make it work. So now that they have the chemistry figured out between Harden and Kyrie, I mean, as long as everybody stays healthy, that they could definitely roll through the Eastern Conference.
Also, Nate D giving me a Thursday night toast. Yeah, shout out to everybody who has alcohol in their house. We don't currently have any here, unfortunately, and I didn't have enough time to go to the bodega to re-up my stock. But hey, here's a toast for you. I'm drinking water like a responsible professional broadcaster. That's what people expect from me, I think, more than anything.
Yeah, and I mean, also if you cheap out on the beverages, you buy more money hats, and you get those diamond studded. People don't know, but every time the mailman comes by Spags' apartment, his girlfriend goes, "Oh, Chris, not again! Don't tell me." And he runs to the door, he opens it up, and it's just a pile of hats stacked on top of each other like it lids.
I really wish they had more colors. Like this, like the three hats that I wear of the patent leather, like these are the colors they have, and I can't expand any further. I'd love to have like a blue one, a purple one. Like for whatever emotions I feel, I want a hat. That's really the main thing. F-Man saying what the F is a bodega? You must not have lived in New York at any point. I mean, in LA, they don't call them bodegas. It's like a deli or / liquor store, but bodega is like a catch-all for everything if you ever lived in the tri-state area, especially New York.
Yeah. So if in New York, there are those like deli / bodegas, there's literally one on every street corner.
Yeah, and they usually have a cat in there who's just hanging out / trying to fight off rats. So it's a fun whole ecosystem in the bodega world, and you're missing out if you don't know.
Yeah, so it depends what part of New York you're in. Like I used to live in Harlem. There was not cats in Harlem, but if you're down by like Chinatown or like anywhere below the numbered streets, once you get into the letters, like yeah, there's going to be cats there.
We also got an ownership update, and it doesn't seem like anything moved around too much. Michael Porter Jr. Still fairly highly owned on DraftKings, and Bradley Beal's up a little bit. So I guess that's one change because of the Bertans being ruled out. I think that might be the reason why. And same thing actually on FanDuel. Bradley Beal taking a boost in ownership on both sites. So let's talk a little more about the night slate, because I guess we could talk about Bradley Beal, a guy who we haven't hit on much. And I really don't get much of Beal or Westbrook, even on shorter slates. And I think it could be a bit of a blind spot, a bit of a concern overall, especially in this game versus Denver. Talked about it today on the tip-off with Kayla and Ben earlier, where I really felt like Denver's really strong. Jamal Murray, one of my highest exposed players on the main slate, but I didn't run it back with Westbrook and Beal at all. And it does seem like one of those guys having a day is how this game stays competitive enough where Jokic and Murray have the upside, and even Porter Jr. and Barton, the upside that we all want to see. So Greg, how do you feel about Beal and Westbrook? And are you buying Beal now as one of the chalkier plays on the night slate?
I prefer Russell Westbrook. I mean, overall, in terms of pay-up options, I think Giannis and Jokic are much stronger guys for the night slate. But I have Westbrook in the DraftKings build about 40% of the lineups, and then on FanDuel in about half the lineup. So on FanDuel, I think he's also really favorable because of a difference in salary. He is $9,200 on FanDuel as compared to his a little bit more expensive DraftKings price. And then also Jamal Murray, $8,300 on FanDuel. So for $900 more, I strongly prefer Russell Westbrook to Jamal Murray on FanDuel. I prefer him on DK as well, except it's a little harder to get to Westbrook when he is 9,500 as opposed to 9,200 on FanDuel. And we have to roster 2 point guards on FanDuel. But yeah, 9,200 is just too cheap of a price for Russell Westbrook.
So let me give you my pitch on why Murray is better than Westbrook. And this is definitely going to be part of why I didn't get much in the way of Westbrook. But Murray in February, and this is including all the court time in particular, because I wasn't sure exactly when Millsap and JaMychal Green went out, and quite frankly, didn't care enough to dig in much further than I did. But I ran the rates for the month because I felt like Murray was close in my lineups, but wasn't quite getting where he was supposed to. And this month, he's had a 31.5% usage rate, 24% assist rate. Jokic has come down a bit in assist rate, still rebounding well. The usage for him still 31%, but it's consolidating pretty heavily. We have 31% usage for Jokic, 31% usage for Jamal Murray. Like, to me, I think these guys are closer to even plays right now, and largely out of necessity for Denver. They were relying so heavily on Jokic earlier in the year, and I think they needed to get Murray back up to speed and back up to where he was in the bubble. And I gave this theory earlier today, so if you've been watching all of our content, apologies, you're basically giving the exact same take on two shows. I usually try to avoid that, but Murray to me is a priority play tonight because I think there's a logical reason why he's been playing out of his mind in this spot in Washington. I mean, we saw him not that long ago have a really good game against them, and I feel like at his price, he has enough of a ceiling here where he shouldn't have been single-digit owned in the main slate to me.
So I disagree just from a points per dollar perspective. Also, because the way this slate shook out, we had Quickly, Rose, Burke season play. He's like the only value players in play. Boban, Denny now is a value play also. My lineup skewed so heavily to be stars and scrubs on both FanDuel and DraftKings that on the main slate, I just didn't find a real need to save those couple of $1,000 salary, and just found it a lot more reasonable to go to James Harden, to go to Giannis, to go to Jokic. And that's where my lineups lived, just being really strong stars and scrubs. That, and I preferred De'Aaron Fox to Jamal Murray if I was going to more the mid to upper tier range of point guards.
So I got a lot of Fox too. And I think, for me, it was really the construction that I had, which allowed me to get to Murray and Fox. I think, Murray a lot more than the field, Fox certainly above the field. But look, I agree. Like, I think Giannis is a strong play. For me, the thing though, that I think I did differently was I still had a good amount of Harden and Kyrie, but got less of them and got more of Murray. And I think one more I mean, I honestly might have paid up more for Buddy Hield too. So that part wasn't the best. But I don't know. I just think Jamal Murray, to me, like I said it earlier when we were talking about swaptimizing, I think Murray still has upside here. And I think if you reflect his rates to where he's been this month, like Jokic still looks like a good play, but Murray looks like a much better play. 47 fantasy points is what I'd have him at if we're to keep his rates where they should be against Washington. Certainly can be a thing that regresses back, that goes back to normal. But I feel like without Millsap, without Harris, without JaMychal Green, you still have Porter Jr. and Barton there, but I have enough of those guys where if Murray doesn't go off, I think one of those guys will. But I just think there's been a bit of a shift in the offense here where it's not just Jokic doing things now. And that's a big change, I think, to note compared to earlier in the year where Jokic dominated, everything in terms of assist rate and usage. I think it's starting to level out to what it probably should be for a fully functioning ecosystem.
Yeah, no, it's not to say that I don't think Jamal Murray should play better than normal, because like you mentioned, all those guys are out. It was really just a function of what the pricing is on this slate. Even for the late slate, there's still a lot of viable value plays there, especially now that DJ Augustine's out, where we have some other cheaper guys that we could get to. Dante DiVincenzo looks a little bit better. Bryn Forbes, even though he isn't starting, he looks a little bit better. Pat Connaughton is viable. And then we still have on the late slate, and then of course, Denny, who I said I liked before. And then we still have Jokic and Giannis available on the late slate too. So it's still, even when there's only 2 games, I'm still prioritizing stars and scrubs as my optimal build.
Well, I hope everybody out there on DraftKings is ready for my Jamal Murray and Giannis onslaught to come and ruin their lives, or hopefully not ruin mine. Really, is the main thing. I hope it doesn't ruin your lives, but like if I take a little bit of your money for these guys, no harm, no foul. Another basketball. Basketball quote there to throw into the mix. Why not?
Yeah. Well, if it goes poor, you can just call the foul on yourself.
Here you go. El Negro Loco, our news god, saying this hour flew. That's what happens here on the late slate sweat and swap show. We're having so much fun. We're swapping, we're sweating. We're talking about the plays that today wasn't even much tilting we had, Greg. Like even Boban not starting the second half. I feel like we've kept a positive, calm, enthusiastic energy.
Yeah, other than we could have a little bit of silliness going on in the second half. The Nets are now up 25 points on the Magic. So I think we're starting to get the risk of Kyrie and Harden not playing in the fourth quarter, and Vucevic for that matter as well. And the Knicks up 15 on the Kings at halftime. So that could lead to a little bit of wonkiness in terms of second half minutes. So I'm a little nervous now about those really strong stars and scrubs lineups that have Harden. Harden's having a great game so far, but I'm a little worried he's not going to play the fourth.
Well, the good news is you don't have to worry about the Knicks game because Buddy Hield's about to shoot the lights out to get the Kings back into that one. So no problem. 5 threes from Buddy right after halftime. It seems like a lock more than anything.
Yeah, and what did he do how many points did Buddy Hield have?
I think he got 10. I think he got 10.
So let's see. So Buddy Hield, he had 6 points on 2 of 6 shooting, 1 of 4 from 3. So yeah, maybe he shoots the lights out and the Kings could lose the game by 12 or something.
One can only hope. I think we're now really as a community, we're all rooting for Buddy Hield now. And that's what he wanted for his 50th birthday. So
what's funny is just as you said that, I look in the chat to see what the most recent comment was. And your friend over under who you're starting to turn, you're now a fan of him. He says, Buddy Hield is about to get traded, which is also a very potential outcome here.
Well, no way to boost his draft stock than him hitting 5 threes to open up halftime. I think, again, we're all mutually motivated here to get Buddy Hield where he needs to be. We're rooting for him. Again, stay tuned after this show. We got the UFC show coming up. Jason Floyd and Pete the Heat going to bring you everything you need to know. They're going to bring the heat, and it's going to be a knockout for you if you watch that show right after us.
Yeah, if you don't show up, then they're going to submit you. Just try to just walk in. Just throw out just random terms like, oh, you're gonna get jabbed in the face.
We had one question that we didn't take before. I think it was from Jacob Kimball, but apologies to whoever it was that asked. But they're asking about Moe Wagner, and we talked about the Washington Stars. We talked about Denny Avdia, some of the guys that we maybe are a little bit more into. Moe Wagner, I think, projects pretty well, but I feel like in this spot going against Jokic, you are in great danger of Wagner getting the hook for Robin Lopez. So to me, I'm very leery of Moe Wagner, even though the price looks good. I think he projects fairly well. Greg, how do you feel in this spot? Moe Wagner going against Jokic and starting once again.
Yeah, so Wagner's been starting. In general, he does not play a ton of minutes. He played 25 minutes last game, except he also got some garbage time run. It was a game the Wizards ended up losing to the Clippers by 19. And if I remember correctly, I think he closed out the game for Washington. He got some extra fourth quarter run that he doesn't normally get just because of the score of the game. The games before that, all games that Wagner started, he played 15 minutes, 11 minutes, and 3 minutes. and those were in competitive games. And last game's a blowout. He ends up getting 25 minutes. So I don't expect Wagner to get the 25 minutes again. In general, his upside hasn't really been there. There's other value plays that I would rather get to.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I just really would have concern that the minutes go away like Greg was talking about. And the projection that Awesemo has for him is 22 minutes. And I think he's going to pop up in an optimizer fairly well with that projection. And I wouldn't run away from it, but I do think Robin Lopez, a little bit more expensive. I just feel and this is a gut instinct thing because of how, some of these games have gone recently, where if the center is killing Wagner or just killing the team in general, they're going to penalize Wagner and put in Lopez, and Lopez will kind of stabilize things. And I think there's a real risk of that today. So I would favor Lopez, but I think getting some Wagner exposure isn't the worst thing in the world. Let's see. Any other questions here? Nothing in the premium Slack. If you got any questions either in the YouTube chat or the premium Slack, get them in now because we're going to answer them. We're going to sit here and we're going to answer every single one. Overthinking things kills me every time is the chat that just disappeared. Here we go. Swap Burks from Quickly would be top 10 SMH. I didn't get the Burks thing today. That's one that I feel like wasn't really occurring to me as much just because he hasn't been a lead guard for the team and Quickly a high usage guy, like shockingly high usage for a rookie, especially coming in with a college pedigree for sure, but not drafted that highly. I feel like Quickly to me was the play all along. But Greg, how much Burks did you get, if any? Are you feeling that pain at all?
Yeah, so I played a decent amount of Burks for a couple of reasons. Number one, also he just stood to benefit without Alfred Payton in there. The other thing too is he had small forward eligibility on DraftKings, so there's a little bit more positional flexibility with rostering him. That, and I wasn't sure what Tibbs was going to do with minutes, so I gave Quickly, Burks, and Rose all about a similar amount of minutes. I didn't expect all three of them to have great games, but just for the fact that Quickly and Rose were projecting for so much more ownership than Burks, I thought it was reasonable to get exposure to him as a little bit of a pivot. And so far, that is one weak spot of my lineups. Everything else is looking pretty good, though. But Burks, not part of that. I'm overweight to the field on Rose, Burks, and Quickly today.
Eric asking how much, but where did I go? How much Middleton on DK is too much? Let me just make sure the ownership that I have is accurate. Chris Middleton going to be projected for 33% ownership now on DK. I would get a little bit above it. Like, I don't hate the idea of him. I don't love his price tag is really the main issue, but it is just a 2-game slate in 8,200. He certainly has 50 fantasy point upside. So I would say for Middleton, getting 50 max would definitely be where I would want to be, at least, it's relative to sorting and all that. But Greg, how about you? If Middleton's going to be 33%, where do you want to be relative to the field?
I don't like him as much on DraftKings. I like him a lot on FanDuel at 7,600. He was my favorite small forward play on the main slate and favorite small forward play on the late slate as well for FanDuel purposes. For DraftKings, though, at 8,300, it's another situation, like I said before. I'd rather just make the salary to go stars and scrubs and try to get in as much Giannis and Jokic as I can, and then just save money with the likes of Denny, Pat Connaughton, Bryn Forbes, those types of guys, and then just go really heavy stars and scrubs. So Middleton, to me, I'd rather be underweight to the field on him than DK than overweight, especially just because his price point is a lot more expensive than it is on FanDuel.
Brandon Hayes asking Murray, Ingram, Porter, Giannis, or Westbrook, Middleton, Ingram. Damn it, he did the thing where he puts Ingram on both sides. So Murray, Porter, and Giannis, or Westbrook, Middleton, and Zion. No site given, Greg, but how do you feel about that?
Where was that question?
It's in the YouTube chat from Brandon Hayes. I
was looking in Slack. It's always hard to remember all of the names at once. So yeah, I like the Ingram side. Yeah, I was just using that to stall.
I would go the Murray side for all the reasons we've discussed.
Murray, Ingram, Porter, Giannis. All right, so I'm going to take out Ingram. So it's Murray, Porter, Giannis, Westbrook, Middleton, Zion. I'd go with the Murray side too, just because I'm a little uncomfortable with Middleton's price, and Zion's pretty expensive on DraftKings. Middleton and Zion are both stronger FanDuel plays than DK.
Also, still no Boban reemergence, which I would say is getting vaguely concerning. I mean, not concerning, but like it'd be nice to get him to a nice round 20, 25.
Yeah, I mean, either way, like we said before, his current fantasy point total it's not going to kill any lineups.
No, it's not. Any Beal love at low ownership? Nate got asked. He's not going to be at low ownership. That's something to keep in mind. I think if he were at low ownership, there's a better argument. But it looks like half the field is going to be on him on both sites. So I think I'm with Greg. I think I might want to go Westbrook's way more just because of the field. But I like Beal as a play. Like I have him better projected than Westbrook tonight. But I think the ownership on Beal seems pretty heavy for a night slate.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that Westbrook is the better play. And even though Beal is the much better real life player than Russell Westbrook, Westbrook's the far better fantasy producer from points per minute basis. And then Westbrook also, he's playing full minutes now. So if you're just looking at his numbers for the season, his minutes were a little muted for the first half of the Wizards games, but that's not an issue at all anymore. He played as much as 44 minutes in a recent game.
T Green saying Middleton can't handle Pelicans. I think he can handle Brandon Ingram and Zion defense if he gets that at all. Maybe Bledsoe defense will be less than desirable, but I think he can handle them pretty well depending on the matchups he gets.
Yeah, people hate Chris Middleton. People don't like Chris Middleton. They don't like Michael Porter Jr., which, I mean, reasonable. We're all frustrated with Michael Porter Jr. at this time, but it's, here we go again, that meme. But I mean, that is what happens every time there's a Michael Porter Jr. slate where I'm like, I won't do it again. And then it's just the Grand Theft Auto walking to the fire. Here we go again, every single time with Michael Porter Jr.
Let's see. Eric Johnson asking, is Campazzo in play on DK? He's not for me, but I also didn't play an ungodly amount of lineups. I just threw in a couple. So Campazzo wasn't a guy that I saw myself getting to.
He's somebody who makes it into a low percentage of lineups for me. So not a priority play, but if you have him in there, I'm fine with that. He should play a decent amount of minutes. The matchup is favorable. So last game, the Nuggets mix up their starting line, but they went with a really tight rotation. They've really, for the most part, they went with Zeke Naji, Campazzo, Barton, Morris, Porter Jr., Murray, Jokic. They didn't really give big minutes to anybody else. With the injuries they're dealing with, Gary Harris out, JaMychal Green out, Paul Millsap out, PJ Dozier, they really went with a 7-man rotation last game.
Our boy Tony saying, fuck MPJ, but I like Middleton. I agree with both those takes. So MPJ and Middleton, I feel like kind of similar guys, maybe in terms of their offensive game. And then Middleton's figured out some of the defensive parts. So I think if anything, he's kind of they're in like the same archetype kind of scheme. MPJ, a better athlete, but I don't know. They're not that far off. MPJ being Middleton, I feel like would be one of his best possible outcomes.
No, because Middleton's a really plus defender. Michael Porter Jr. will never be that.
No, that is the part that's going to be difficult for him to overcome. And we are locked. So, Greg, give the people the plugs. You've earned it after your hard day here in the office doing the marathon stint that I think I'll be doing tomorrow. So, boy, we all get a little taste here. Me and Greg get just two kindred spirits who are putting in weird hours.
Yeah, follow me on Twitter at GEhrenbergDFS. And guys, don't forget to like the video if you haven't done it already. A lot of people are starting to leave out, but hit the like button on the way out and subscribe to the YouTube channel because you want to know when all of Spags' 80 shows he's doing tomorrow. You want to know when they start. You want to know when I'm going to be on for 3 hours in a row. So do us a favor, subscribe to the channel. That'll make everybody nicer to us also.
And go move over to the other stream. Check out Pete the Heat and Jason Floyd breaking down the next UFC card. They are two of the best brains in MMA and MMA DFS. So go check them out. And shout out to Tyler doing another show. So we appreciate everybody tuning in. Hit the like button on your way out. Subscribe. And we appreciate you guys. Peace.